Let's testify tonight. Oh God, you've done so much for me. I'm grateful and overwhelmed here at your feet. And I could stay here forever, Lord. But you call me to something more. And I hear you say that you have a plan to use every broken woman and man to display just how good you are. We are your living pieces of art. What good does it do to hide away when all of my scars are a picture of grace? All right. So I will testify of the power of God. I will tell the word of the hope I have found. You, Lord. For my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Oh, do you believe it? Has he done it for anyone else? I said, has he done it for anyone else? Because the God that I serve, he's always at work. Has he done it for anyone else? So come on and testify of the power of God. Come on and tell the world of the hope we have found. For our body was broken, our hearts were made whole, and that's too good to keep to yourself. Come on and testify of the power of God. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify your voice. This is my. So I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify. Come on, take it up. Jesus, my champion, the victor of grace, the only one worthy of all of my praise. Yeah. So come on and testify. Oh, somebody lift him high. Come on, testify the power of God. I will tell the world of the hope I have found. Oh, for my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Sing that. Oh, my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Oh, let's do that right now, Murfreesboro.
Hey guys, yes, I'm back and still alive. Last time I checked. Where did I put my hat? I don't even know where I put my hat. Oh well, no hat today. So, still trying to kind of recover from that whole thing with the MS. So sorry that I'm not quite my normal self yet. I'm hoping soon. But it's just one of those things. I still have the vertigo is still pretty bad, and And the exhaustion is there, but not as bad as it was. But the vertigo is definitely probably the worst thing right now as far as symptoms beyond my norm. So just kind of trying to deal with that. On the bright side, the pain isn't as bad as usual. It's still there, but it's not mind-bogglingly bad right now. However, I just gotta, work with what I got. If that makes any kind of sense. So Bradley is here, Gorilla is here, Godson is here, and there's a few people lurking as well. So welcome to everybody who is here, and anybody who joins later, welcome as well. We do not punish people for being late; we just make fun of them. That's not bad. As part of my attempt to be somewhat healthier, no more pop. So this is, well, unless we're at a restaurant, that's like the one exception we make. So like today, we took my son out because of his birthday. Was just last week or the week before. It was about 10 days ago, well, 9 days ago, and so we took my son to Red Robin to get his free burger, only to find out that Red Robin has, of course, changed their policy on the birthday burgers to where you have to have a certain amount of points on your card in order to get your birthday burger, which means that if you haven't bought a few burgers over the last year on that particular card, you don't get a birthday burger, which sucks because like we've been to Red Robin a few times over the last year, but we usually use my wife's or sometimes my Red Robin card. We don't use my son's very often, so he didn't have enough points, so he ended up paying for his burger, but c'est la vie. Anyway, why was I saying that? I said something about when we were out there. Oh yeah, because of the no pop rule. So when we're at Red Robin, I had a Coke Zero, but when I'm at home and driving and stuff, strictly water. But I can have like flavored drop-ins and stuff for the water, and this is a lime drop-in. It's pretty good. So definitely good. Splenda also makes a couple of little. They're like the little squeeze bottles of Splenda sweetener. It's the exact same squeeze bottle, but it's a mix of Splenda sweetener with like orange extract or lemon extract. It's not bad. My only problem is they don't have lime. Because I'm a big lime guy. I don't know why. I've always liked lime. Don't know if that means anything. All right, so in the chat, Godson is here. Let's see, Gorilla saying hi to Godson, as well as hi to any and all lurkers. Thank you, of course, for that. Because yes, if you're lurking and you don't like the chat, hey, that's totally cool. Hope that you get something out of these live streams. I know that the first part of the live streams is me rambling. Then we get into the actual reading and study, and then we do some more rambling. But if you get something out of any part of that, awesome. If you don't, why are you here? Godson says, the atheist I try to debate named Scott, and he puts paper on his head. Sounds like an interesting guy. Why does he put paper on his head? Robert saying hi, says Salty Trekker. How you doing, Robert? And says, hello there. Well, better late than never. Well, you're not super late. I just got started a few minutes ago. Godson says my birthday is coming up. Well, happy birthday in advance. You going to be as old as me? Miss Moneypenny saying hi. How you doing? Stan says, just don't end up like that streamer who was so hooked on soda that he couldn't even drink a cup of water without chasing each sip with a shot of Coke. Wow, I never heard about that guy. But no, I'm not that bad. But, my wife made the suggestion that I stop drinking pop because, it's bad for you and dehydrates you and stuff. And part of the problem a couple of weeks ago was that I was dehydrated. And Even though I usually don't listen to my wife and I'm a stubborn guy like most guys are, this time I decided to actually listen to her because that thing, whatever you want to call it, hit me pretty darn hard. Trustin in the house saying good afternoon. Girl saying hi to Robert. Let's see. Donut steal from me. Or do not steal from me. I won't. Girl saying hi to Penny. And girl also saying hi to Trustin. Oh, he's talking about the crown thing because now Johnson says, I'm number one. Well, good. Good for you. Gorilla says hi to Stan Lee, and then Godson, are you calling him a crayon? Enter. Godson, are you calling him a crayon? Enter with that. No, I'm not sure I get that one, but hey. Let's see. Godson says, telling me happy birthday. I'm your son's age. Oh, jerk. I've been drinking just water for a long time now. For so long now. When I drink anything else, can feel the sugar or caffeine and other stuff. Well, yeah, I get that actually, because I'll tell you, Bradley, a number of years ago, I stopped drinking anything with sugar in it. And, sugar, give me sugar. Yeah, I stopped drinking anything with sugar in it. And so if someone handed me a regular Coke and I took a sip of it, I'd be like, what is wrong with this? Because now I know there's Diet Coke and Coke Zero. I prefer Coke Zero. Or now it's Coke Zero Sugar, whatever. Or Zero Sugar Coke. It's like, just stick with the name. But yeah, so now, I've been so used to drinking sugar-free drinks that drinking anything with sugar is just like weird and bizarre. It's going to be very hot here next week. Going to be in the hundreds. It is hot. Well, it's not super hot outside, although it's very hot up here because this room is technically part of an attic. I have the air conditioner blowing now, but I just turned it on right before I started the live stream. Should have turned it on earlier, but I never think of it. But it was the thing that gets me is, I know it's a stereotype to say, but it's not the heat, it's the humidity. Although I'm very excited because on Friday I'm getting my windows tinted on the car, so it won't be as bad for me when I'm out on the road. And as of today, I have a sticker on the back of my car from the Department of Homeland Security. I am not making that up. That gives me permission to have darker windows. And so there is actually a sticker on the back of my car from the Department of Homeland Security. And it even looks like a little official government sticker. And I had to put it on now because it has to go on the inside of the glass so that it can't be tampered with. This is the government thing. They don't want you messing with this stuff. So it has to go on the inside of the glass. But when they apply the tint, that goes on the inside of the glass. Now, under normal circumstances, if you have a sticker on your window, that voids the warranty on any tint as far as bubbling and stuff like that. However, this shop that I found, and I will definitely show you guys the result when it's done. But the shop that I found the guy was willing to keep me under warranty despite the sticker because the sticker was due to a physical disability. So really just a straight up guy. I really like that guy. Talking about the owner of the shop. Girl says, Stanley, I wanted a minute before I sipped that soda. I waited a minute. Let's see. Stan says, water is pretty gross. Fish piss in that stuff. That's true. Fish do pee in water, and that's what gives it that good flavor. Girl saying happy birthday to Godson. My kidneys would revolt if I had water. Now, your kidneys would love it if you did. Kidneys need liquid, and particularly hydrating liquid. Crayon eater. Let's see. Yeah, full strength Coca-Cola makes my head feel numb. My teeth feel numb. Wow. Fat Albert versus Bane, says Godzin. First weird matchup of the night. Well, that's an interesting one because Fat Albert, of course, is, I know a lot of people forget this. Fat Albert, I probably have to give it to Fat Albert. Well, it depends. You see, because, okay, so Bane has his venom, right, that makes him stronger than a normal human. And so when he injects himself with this venom, he swells up in size and becomes much, much stronger physically. However, Bane is also a very egotistical guy. So Bane usually doesn't start with the venom on. He starts trying to beat the guy with his normal strength. And then if he runs into someone who's super duper skilled or something like Batman, then he pumps up the venom so that it gives him an edge. Fat Albert looks laughable, right? You see Fat Albert running down the street towards you, and you're going to say, what, is there a donut truck nearby or something? But what people forget is that Fat Albert is ridiculously strong. He is superhumanly strong. And so, and I mentioned this yesterday, but Fat Albert literally uses a radiator. When I say radiator, I mean like those indoor home radiators that you would use for heat in apartments in like New York and stuff. Not very popular outside of the Northeast, but a lot of houses uses radiators for heat. And Fat Albert and the Junkyard Gang, they just made their musical instruments out of whatever they could find. And what did Fat Albert do? He found one of those home radiator units, right? And these things weigh probably a couple 100 pounds, and that's assuming there's nothing in them. And then on top of that, he then crushes it like it's an accordion, playing it as a musical instrument. And so the fact that Fat Albert can do that and by the way, he'll do that for hours on end without getting winded. So based on all that, I say Fat Albert versus Bane. Fat Albert will run up and go, hey, 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 it's time to pay. And then he'll just crush Bane's head like an egg and it'll be over. Bane will be like, what the hell? And Andy Tiger, I see you there in the chat. Am I feeling better? From the initial problem that I had a week ago Friday, yes-ish. There are some lasting symptoms that I'm dealing with that I'll probably have to talk to my neurologist about if this continues for any length of time. But based on what we know, these lingering symptoms from something like this can last from several days to several weeks. So it could be a couple months before I'm really feeling better. But thank you for asking, my friend. I truly, truly appreciate it. What didn't make me feel better was that stupid car. The day before I go, it's like 2 days before I went into the hospital, get a flat tire, and, cost me 680, and had to put that on a payment plan, and it's like the worst possible timing. And the funny thing is, so here's what, just a funny story real quick before we get started today. Is that so today I go after we meet I meet the wife and kids at Red Robin for my son's birthday meal. I get ready to go do some driving in Uber, and lo and behold, the little tire pressure alarm's going off. Now, under normal circumstances, because it wasn't extraordinarily low, like the standard pressure on the tires in my car is like 35. Since it was a little cooler today than it has been, it was like at 30. The PSI was at 34 on all three of the other tires. But one tire, it was down to 29. And that's not earth-shakingly bad. That's usually one of those situations where you put a little air in it and see if you got a slow leak by waiting a few hours and see if it goes down again. I was like, you know what? I've had such bad luck with tires this year. I'm just going straight to Big O. Big O Tires did not sponsor this, but I would tell you, if you're in Murfreesboro and you need tires or an alignment, go to frickin' Big O Tires on Memorial Boulevard. That guy is so awesome. And I'm not just, like, let's say you get a flat tire. You can roll into his shop, and I don't know if this is, well, it's not Big O official corporate policy, but it is this guy's policy. The guy owns the Big O Tires on Memorial Boulevard. So you roll into Memorial Boulevard, and you got a flat tire. If they can fix it, they will fix it for free. That's period. End of story. They're not gonna. It's not no catch, no, minimum purchase required or anything like that. They will simply fix your flat tire for free because they want your business, because they want you to come back and spend your big money on getting a set of high-end tires one day. And if you're like, oh, I need to get some tires for my car, where should I go? Hey, how about that cool place where they fix my flat tire for free, right? And of course, I had to do a front end alignment, and when doing a front end alignment, for the next 5 years, my front end alignments are covered, which is nice. I don't know if that's out of the ordinary for mechanics, but I got to say these guys are pretty darn cool. So there's my official plug for Big O Tires on Memorial Boulevard in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. If you live or are in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, you got to check it out. So anyway, so the flat tire alarm goes off. That was a big old digress. And I go to the Big O Tires because I'm like, I'm not playing with this. I'm not going to bother putting air in it and waiting. I'm just going straight there. And so I went there, and it's so funny because I walked in, and the owner was actually there, and he saw me. And as soon as he saw me, he looked at me and says, "You're not here for a tire, are you?" And I said, well, tire pressure alarm went off on my car. I just, I'm hoping that it's something you guys can fix. And so and the thing is, they immediately, he sent one of the guys out, rolled the car in, took the tire off. And yes, they found that I'd hit a screw, but they said it was in the center of the tire, so an easy fix for them. And so they fixed the tire, and I was out of there in less than an hour. I was scared to death that I was going to have to buy another tire, but fortunately that didn't happen. All right, so let's get into Exodus chapter 37, shall we? So Exodus 36, we talked about the actual construction of the tabernacle. Today, we're going to talk about the big one, the one that everybody cares about, because of a little guy named Indiana and his adventures. For whatever reason, people like that. Actually, it's really good, but that's fine. All right, so we're going to talk about the Ark of the Covenant and other stuff. And you're probably right, Thomas. Firestone probably would have had to walk in with a screw in one tire. Yep, you need a full set. All right, so this is chapter 37 of the book of Exodus, second book of the Bible, if you're following along at home. 37th chapter, starting at verse 1. All right, I got to say, I would love it if, and maybe I'll do this sometime because it just drives me nuts so much. I would love it if somebody would make a accurate translation of the Bible, except update the names just to make it easier to understand. Because I get that these names may be more accurate, but they're so darn hard to pronounce that it drives me nuts. All right. Bezalel made the ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, a cubit and a half wide, and a cubit and a half high. He overlaid it with pure gold, both inside and out, and made a gold molding around it. He cast 4 gold rings for it and fastened them to its 4 feet, with its 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other. Then they made poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold, and he inserted the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry it. He made the atonement cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long and a cubit and a half wide. When he made 2 cherubim out of hammered gold at the ends of the cover, he made 1 cherub on one end and the second cherub on the other. At the 2 ends, he made them of one piece with the cover. The cherubim had their wings spread upward, overshadowing the cover with them. The cherubim faced each other, looking toward the cover. So the cherubim would have their wings up and their faces down. Something that, like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, they kind of got that wrong a little bit. The cherub did have their faces down, but their wings were stretched forward instead of upward. Also, there weren't enough wings, and the faces looked too human. All right. So now we go to the table. Remember the table? They made the table out of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, a cubit wide, and a cubit and a half high. They overlaid it with pure gold and made a gold molding around it. They also made around it a rim of handbreadth wide. Made around it a rim a handbreadth wide, in other words, that wide. Well, depending on whose hands you use, I guess. And put a gold molding on the rim. They cast 4 gold rings for the table and fastened them to 4 corners. There were 4 corners where the 4 legs were. The rings were put close to the rim to hold the poles used in carrying the table. Remember, we talked yesterday a little bit about how the tabernacle, the giant tent that all this was taking place inside of, was kind of designed to be able to be broken down and put it back up and be portable and stuff. Notice that everything so far has poles for carrying it, because as the tribe would go from place to place to place, they would actually go, they would actually take all this stuff with them. Okay. The poles for carrying the table were made of acacia wood. They really liked their acacia wood, and were overlaid with gold. And they made, probably because it's common in that area, but, just saying. And they made from pure gold the articles for the table, its plates, its dishes, its bowls, its pitchers for the pouring out of drink offerings. So look at this so far. So basically, most of what we're getting is the big chunks of furniture that we're getting here, the ark itself and the table itself, are constructed from acacia wood specifically, and then overlaid with gold. So a very thin layer of gold on top of acacia wood. However, certain parts, like the rings and the cover for the ark and stuff, as well as all the settings for the table, plates and stuff like that, were made of pure gold. This is a very expensive dinette set. All right, so they made pure gold, the articles of the table, let's see, plates, dishes, and bowls, its pitchers for pouring out drink offerings. Yeah, I don't remember if I read that, but there we go. The lampstand. Now, the lampstand, keep in mind, because we don't use lampstands in the traditional way anymore. I technically do. There's a lampstand right over there, thanks to Mr. Know-It-All, who gave it to me for lighting up this area. But a lampstand is basically, in ancient times, would be a pole that usually would hold an oil lamp, so that it would basically be able to light up a room without having to sit on something low. If it's high on a lampstand, then it lights up the whole room. If it's low, then it only lights up a corner of the room, because shadows and stuff. Which is why Christ uses the lampstand metaphor several times when talking about spreading the word, that you shouldn't put, he said, don't put your lamp under a bush, you put it on a lampstand, so in case you're wondering what that is. So they made the lampstand of pure gold, no acacia wood here, just pure gold. They hammered it out its base and shaft and made its flower-like cups buds, and blossoms of one piece with them. 6 branches extended from the sides of the lampstand, 3 on one side and 3 on the other. 3 cups shaped like almond flowers with buds and blossoms were on one branch, 3 on the next branch, and the same for all 6 branches extending from the lampstand. And on the lampstand were 4 cups shaped like almond flowers with buds and blossoms. One bud was under the first pair of branches extending from the lampstand, the second bud under the second pair, and the third bud under the third pair. 6 branches in all. The buds and the branches were all of one piece with the lampstand, hammered from pure gold. Now, that might seem kind of weird. How could it all be one piece? But at the same time, you have to remember that gold is a very, very malleable metal. And so it's very easy to take 2 pieces of gold and weld them together with a little bit of heat. So I'm sure that would not be too difficult for someone who was a master at the crafts back then. They made, they made its 7 lamps as well as its wick trimmers and trays of pure gold. They made the lampstand and all its accessories from 1 talent of pure gold. And I remember we talked about what a talent was, but I can't remember. So, what is a talent? Okay. Yeah, I know it's a unit of weight. Okay. So... Okay, the Book of Exodus. Talent was a unit of weight primarily used for precious metals like gold and silver. Is the largest unit of weight in the biblical system, equivalent to 3,000 shekels. A talent of silver weighed approximately 75.6 pounds. Oh, but it says a talent of gold was double the weight of a talent of silver. So a talent of gold then would be about 151.2 pounds. So let's take a look. Let's see. So 151.2 times 16 ounces per pound is 2,425.6 ounces of gold. Let's see. Gold rate today. All right, so as of right now, gold is it's down. It's at $3,405.40 per ounce. So times 3,405.50 equals. All right, so each lampstand had a monetary value of approximately, in today's money, would have a monetary value of approximately $8,260,380.80. I wish I had the so now you know ready to go on there. Oh, and I say I switched the little stock exchange thing up here. Let's put that back. So there you go. $8 million lampstands. And then the altar of incense. They made the altar of incense out of acacia wood. It was square, a cubit long, a cubit wide, 2 cubits high. Its horns of one piece with it. They overlaid the top with all sides and the horns with pure gold, and they made the gold molding around it. They made 2 gold rings below the molding, 2 on each of the opposite sides to hold the poles used to carry it. They made the poles of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold. They also made the sacred anointing oil and the pure fragrant incense the work of the perfumer. So there you go. So they made the ark, the table, the lampstand, and the altar of incense. So, hope you enjoyed that one. And, you learned a little bit about how much one of those lampstands would cost if it was today. And now, back to the chat we go. And I'll try to catch up, and then we'll wrap things up and call it an afternoon. And I hope you guys are getting something out of this. Please tell me if you're not. Well, no, don't. All right, Stan Lee says, I think it's to differentiate zero sugar and caffeine and just zero sugar. Yeah, you're probably right, because there's caffeine free, which is not the same. Ever going to cover King's Verse? Well, if I knew what King's Verse was, I could probably answer that question. Robert says, though RFK Jr. is successful about getting rid of these artificial sweeteners, then what are these companies going to do? You know, I don't know if he'll be successful or not at getting rid of artificial sweeteners, but this is just. I don't want to be a jerk, but since when were the Republicans all about let's regulate the companies into oblivion? I thought that was the Democrats. Anybody? Robbie, you know how the weather we had yesterday, found some beautiful pictures and some tornadoes dropped down. You know, I dropped off a guy at or I picked up a guy from an auto shop that he just dropped off his car at because they had damage from golf ball size hail, and they're not too far from us. So I'm like, whoo, that could have been ugly. Because even though my car we park in the garage, my wife's car we don't, because I'm a slob and we got to clean out our garage, and I don't have the physical strength to do it right now. They need to stop some food coloring usage as well. Well, you know, here's the problem, and I'm sorry. I'm gonna put on your big boy pants for a minute. I'm gonna say some meany things. Grow the F up. And if you don't like artificial colors and sweeteners in your food, then don't buy foods with artificial colors and sweeteners. And don't give me the crap about, oh, there's nothing else available, because there is. It's just not as good. Why is it not as good? Because it doesn't have artificial colors and sweeteners in it. And I do understand that, yes, having artificial colors and sweeteners is not as good. And you know what? If everybody said, you know what, instead of saying, oh, big brother government, please fix this for me, if everybody voted with their dollars, the businesses would fix it tomorrow. Trustin says, I heard something about some kind of new law down your way about tinted glass. I don't know, but I got my permit, and it's from the state and the Department of Homeland Security, so it's legit. In fact, it was kind of funny because I took it to the window tinter guy, and he, you know, because, look, I know, and by the way, I will tell you, I hate the fact that you drive around like Murfreesboro, where I live, because I spend a lot of time driving around Murfreesboro. I see if I were to try to take a picture of every car with an illegal tint job on it, I would never stop taking pictures because they are everywhere. And it honestly, it genuinely, because, you guys know I'm a law and order kind of guy. I do believe in following the law of the land. And the law of the land says you cannot tint below 70% of the front window, 35% on the side window, and you can go as much as you want behind the driver. But people do it all the time because it looks cool, and people are doing it to a even beyond what I would do. Like, they're going pure blackout, which, like, you're talking 5% or even 2.5%. 2.5% is what they put on limos, and they're doing it on the windshield. That's dangerous, people. That is stupid. Because if you have to take that car out at night, you're not going to be able to see squat. And the thing is that the reason that I am getting dark tint on my car is not because I want to look cool. The reason I'm getting dark tint on my car is because of my MS. Direct sunlight is very much an irritant for me. And so my neurologist wrote a letter that I was able to send to the Department of Homeland Security, and they approved my permit for a darker window tint. Now, the interesting thing is that you might say, and in fact, my wife has said, well, how do you know that truck that just drove by with the super dark glass, and you're complaining, how do you know that they don't have some kind of disability or something. And at first I was like, yeah, you're right. Maybe they do. Maybe they did get a permit from the state. Who knows? However, part of the, and it actually, because you get a little packet of information when you get your permit. You get the permit itself, which must stay in your car at all times with the registration, so that if a police officer does question your tint, you can show them the permit. Number two, you have to have, by law, a sticker from the Department of Homeland Security on your rear window on the driver's side, approximately halfway up, 1 inch over from the end. I mean, they're that specific. It really does say all that. And when I got my kit, I got the sticker. And I will tell you, the sticker is very bright, very easy to see. You might not know what it is from a distance. It just looks like a little silver square, but you will definitely see it. And the thing is that, and it's very clear the way that it says, it has to be clearly visible. The only way to make it clearly visible is to put it on the rear window before you have the rear window tinted, so that the tint goes over the actual permit. That way, on the outside, the permit is technically on top and gets direct sunlight. So all that being said, I've never seen one of these stickers before in my life. So if all these people need to have it because of they don't like sunlight, there is a process to get a permit. And I know I'm just a stupid old fuddy-duddy that follows the law. But in fact, it's so funny. When I went to the window tint guy, he was a really nice guy. He really was. But and again, I'm going to show off what the car looks like and kind of do a review of their tint job and recommend them probably, because so far I would have no reason that I wouldn't. The service from them has been spectacular. But but when I talked to the guy, I showed him the permit. And I said, but here's the funny thing about the permit. Typically, when you talk to window tinting people, now when you hear the percentage is the amount of light that can go through the glass. So a 0% glass wouldn't be glass. It would just be a wall, right? Because 0% means no light can pass through. A 5% would be basically, and that's what most of the people that have really, really dark windows go with 5%. Because most tinting outfits don't carry 2.5% unless they specialize in tinting limousines. But the 5%, which is usually as dark as anybody can go, is like wearing really dark sunglasses. And then there's 3 different grades of material. And here's another great thing about this guy. I can't speak highly enough about this guy. When I do the official review, you'll understand. But there are 3 grades of material. There's like the cheap stuff, the middle grade stuff, and the stuff that's kind of overpriced. And among other things, he's giving me the stuff that's overpriced at a discounted price to where it's about the price of the middle of the road stuff, because he just realized that I was going to be word of mouth advertising for him when I talked about how I drive Uber and stuff. But I don't have a problem with that. I think that's really cool. So I'll take that as a sponsorship. But anyway, the amount of tint, you can go down to 5% on any of them. The problem is that here's what people keep in stock, right? They have 5%, and then they'll have like 20%. And then they'll have 35%, and then they'll have 70%. And that's usually what they keep in stock. Oh, and 50% for people that want a light tint, but, don't want their car to look like it's tinted. And so the problem is that My permit specifically says, and now Spring wants to get in the act. Oh, probably because of the thunder. That's what it is. You got scared because of the thunder. Okay. So my permit specifically says that I can go down as far as 10%. No such thing, right? I mean, like if Google say, yes, you can get 10% tint. No, nobody carries 10% tint. So I asked the guy, I said, look, it says 10%, but I'm willing to bet you don't carry 10%. And he goes, no, we can special order it, but it can take months to get it. That nobody carries 10%. It's just not commonly used. And I said, shoot. And he goes, well, and this is where it was getting a little funny. Man, I'm talking forever on this. But he said, if we put 5% on there, chances are the cops aren't going to give you a hard time about that when you show them the permit. And now, and most cops, by the way, they have little devices that can measure the window tint. And I can say, you know what, you're right, and I get what you're saying. But also understand, I drive all the time, and it's the only way I can make extra money on top of Social Security. And so if I get busted, then that's, if I get busted like 2 or 3 times, then I'm out. I can no longer drive Uber for a while. And I don't want to take that chance. I said, if you can't do it, I understand. I'll see if I can find it somewhere else. He goes, well, no, I didn't say that. He said that that was his first solution. His second solution was to take and tint the window twice. So what they're going to do is they basically cover, if I remember correctly, they do, I can't remember if it's 50%, then 40%, or 40%, then 20%. Some weird combination of 2 tint jobs on the same window, and it will equal 10%. And so when he said that, I was like, okay, I'm good with that. Oh yeah, I think it's 20% and 50% because that would make 50% of 20%, which would be 10%. But anyway, so I said, and he said, but I assume that would cost extra. And he said, well, technically, it would definitely double the work materials. But if you'll do me a favor, then I won't charge you for it. And I said, what's that? He goes, well, let me put 5% on all the other windows where it's legal. And I said, done. So it'll be 10% on the front 2 windows and 5% everywhere else, which is still, that'll be nice. I would rather have it be 10% all the way around, but it's just so it matches, but I certainly understand his position on it. And so I will take it. And yeah, really, really looking forward to getting the windows tinted. But like I said, the sticker is obvious. The permit is clear. Anybody can apply for it. And the funny thing is and it's free. I mean, that's the funny thing. You literally, here's how you file for the permit. If you look on tn.gov, the official Tennessee website, you will find the email address to write to. And in the email you write them, you're supposed to give them a copy of your registration, a copy of your driver's license, as well as a copy of the note from your doctor that says that you need to have a tint job. And so I literally wrote the email that said, hey, I don't know if there's anything specific I have to tell you, but attached is the stuff I guess I'm supposed to give you to get a window tint permit. And then it said, wait a few weeks for a response. So I've been checking my email with bated breath and no response. And then all of a sudden my wife is like, are you in trouble? Because there's some snail mail letter from the Department of Security. And I'm like, what? And so when I open it up, it's the permit and stuff. So yeah, it's not a difficult process. You send them an email. It's not even a formalized form with a doctor's note and your license and registration, and then they'll send you a permit. And I paid nothing. I paid not a dime for this permit. And so There's no excuse to not do it. So, all the way circling back to your initial thing, Trustin, I would love to see the police crack down on illegal window tinting because it drives me nuts. Because I know it's a safety issue for the police, and it's also a safety issue sometimes for pedestrians. If you can't see the person in the car, sometimes you don't know if they can see you. And as far as the police are concerned, if they can't see you in the car, then they have to assume that you are armed and ready to go. And that's not good. All right. Now that I've wasted a ton of time, Robert says, no, thanks, Gorilla. Tomcat versus Wile E. Coyote. That's an interesting one because Tom and Wile E. Coyote are both famous for attempting to catch something and failing, and, various horrible things happening to them as they fail. Now, here's the interesting thing. So we got to look at, it's going to come down to, I think, durability here. Both of them have died multiple times. And so they are not indestructible because we've seen them die, become angels and go to heaven because that's what I guess happens in cartoons. And so so they're not immortal. They're not indestructible. So we have to see who is more durable than the other. Now, as far as feats of strength, I would say, Tom has tanked anvils to the head many, many, many times. Small explosives many, many, many times. Of course, assorted mouse traps and stuff like that many times. However, Wile E. Coyote's on a whole different level here because Wile E. has tanked government-grade ordnance on a very regular basis. And Wile E. also has the brief ability to defy the laws of physics when running and stuff like that. So, and we also know Wile E. Coyote is very, very fast because he's almost as fast as Roadrunner. It's just that when Roadrunner kicks it into turbo, there's no way to keep up with him. So I think that I'm going to have to give it to Wile E. Coyote after careful consideration. All right, so Gorilla says the guy at the body shop that fixed my door I was impressed with. He said what we needed to do and charged me exactly what he quoted. Didn't try to sell me on some new hinge that he said would bend them back. That's cool. Yeah, when you get somebody you can trust, that's always nice. Spider-Man 3 Venom versus Tom Hardy Venom. Wow, that's an interesting one. Again, trying to compare apples to apples here as far as their feats and all that, it's really tough because, unfortunately, we haven't gotten a lot of Spider-Man 3's Venom. Well, I say unfortunately, but it wasn't that great. But Spider-Man 3's Venom was actually dispatched. I mean, because you got to look at weaknesses. Both of them are basically the almost unkillable Mr. Fantastic-esque stretching abilities creature that can also bond with a human host. And so they're set up a little bit different as far as the bonding and all that, because in the Spider-Man version, there doesn't seem to be any difficulty for the parasite to bond to pretty much anyone. It just goes from Peter to Brock, and no problem. There was no question about, oh no, is it someone that's not compatible or something? It's also just a random alien that's just dropped out of the sky, as opposed to these symbiotes that have been harvested by evil corporation, and they have a lot of trouble actually bonding with people unless they find the perfect genetic match. So that's problem number one for the Tom Hardy side. But other than that, they're both symbiotes are pretty much indestructible except for their basic weakness of certain sonic vibrations. and as well as I believe fire, if I remember correctly. That could be, I don't remember, something. But the thing is that at the end of the day, the Spider-Man 3 Venom was dispatched by a simple pumpkin bomb, while there was some sonic stuff preventing Brock from being bonded to the parasite. Whereas I would dare say that Tom Hardy's Venom would survive that. It might hurt him quite a bit, but I mean, come on, he survived a space shuttle explosion like twice. So I think I would have to get a Tom Hardy's. Stanley says, hey. Indy, I already said that, but of course, but yes, thank you so much for dropping by. I didn't know if you were going to stick around for the reading and stuff, so I wanted to respond right away. But thank you so much, Indy. And if you're still here, thank you again. Don't forget to send me a check. I'm sorry, I had to say it. A radiator is just old tech. They used to have a boiler in the basement instead of a furnace. Well, yeah, but but the point is that Fat Albert could crush it and use it as a musical instrument without breaking a sweat. And by the way, if you're Fat Albert's size, it's impressive if you can walk across a room without breaking a sweat. So that man has got some super strength. Do not underestimate the power of Fat Albert. Which Bane, Batman or Robin or Dark Knight? I was assuming Dark Knight Rises Bane. People saying hi. More people saying hi. Oh, Aravic's in the house. Good to see you, Aravic. I see you popped in a little while ago. Let's see. Stan Lee says $600 plus sounds pretty pricey for. Well, it's 2 new tires and a front end alignment. So when you put it all, and I don't know what prices are like where you're at, Stan, but that's actually pretty typical around here. Let's see. And I did opt, there were 3 levels of front end alignment I could do. I did opt for the more expensive one. I could have saved about $100 if I'd gone with the cheaper front end alignment, but the more expensive one included the 5-year coverage. Captain Phantom Nerd in the house. Good to see you, Captain. Hope you are well, my friend. And I see you, Indy is still here, amazingly. So I will expect that check. Thomas says hello to the captain. And let's see. Strongman versus football player. Well, you see, there's an interesting one, because at least you're not talking about wusses like baseball players this time. You're talking about football players. I assume you're talking about American football players. But then you got to ask the question, are you talking about American football players from back when strongmen were a thing, or American football players today? Because if you're talking about American football players today, the strongmen will crush them like tin cans. Because, the problem is, and don't get me wrong, I understand, I'm not trying to say it's bad or anything, but the NFL has become all, wussy because of concussions. And so, there's that. But as far as old school football players, they wore a leather hat instead of a helmet. Concussions, they were just like, yeah, it's Tuesday, right? Those guys, I think, would probably take out the strongmen. Let's see. Salty does Big O tires have a mega deuce there? There's a reference to the anime Big O. Not that I am aware of. They do have a toilet, though. Elmer Fudd versus Yosemite Sam. Well, that's interesting because, you see, that one is honestly going to depend on the terrain more than anything else, because both Elmer Fudd and Yosemite Sam are crack shots with their weapons of choice. However, Elmer uses a long barrel hunting rifle, sometimes a shotgun, where Yosemite Sam uses 6-shooters. And while both weapons are indeed very deadly, well, guess what? 6-shooters just don't have the range. Yosemite Sam has 2 weapons and 12 shots in quick succession, which is great. But if they're at a distance, Elmer Fudd, and so that's why, like I said, depends on the terrain. If they're at a distance and they got to get close to each other, and there's no way to sneak up on them, Elmer Fudd can take out Yosemite Sam for probably at least 400 or 500 yards. And Yosemite Sam needs to get in within about probably at the most with those kind of 6-shooters, probably 75 feet. So, there's a big difference in firearm capacity. So I'm going to have to give it to Elmer Fudd unless it's a close quarters fight or indoors, in which case I would give it to Yosemite Sam. That's right. Yeah, Firestone WB4 no tire. Yeah, a lot of places would do that. Tomcat versus Wile E. I already did that one. You should come. You should cover Book of Kings. Well, maybe we will. Stay tuned. Now, big question: does the description match the Raiders prop? There's actually, it's kind of funny, Stan. We talked about this before. It's similar, but not exact, right? The biggest difference is the cherubim, the two angels on top. The Indiana Jones version, the cherubim look like the classic modern pop culture Hollywood-esque version of and just a notification that there's lightning in the area. But the so the classic person with wings is what basically angels are depicted as most of the time in modern pop culture. As opposed to the biblical description of angels, which have these angels have multiple faces with different animals on them. They have 6 wings. They specifically do not wear clothes because 2 of their wings are used to wrap their bodies. And so these are very, very different, definitely unworldly beings that, and if you look at the cherubim and Raiders of the Lost Ark, they're just people with wings bent over. But other than that, I gotta say, it's actually pretty accurate. The only other thing is that Indy and I can't remember his buddy's name had to put the poles in order to carry the ark. But I believe it said in the earlier chapter of Genesis that the poles were never to be removed. So butt up, face down. I'm not sure exactly what you mean. Fred Flintstone versus Fat Albert. Fred Flintstone versus Fat Albert is an interesting one because a lot of people forget. Fred Flintstone is a caveman, and he's a cartoon caveman. And what does that mean? That's right, he's super strong. Fred Flintstone has shown that he can lift objects that weigh many hundreds of pounds like they were nothing. In fact, Wilma, Fred's lovely wife, has lifted even larger things than Fred in times of need. So, that being said, now Fred also has the advantage of being in significantly better shape than Fat Albert. So he's probably faster than Fat Albert on his feet. And Fat Albert, on the other hand, not as fast. Probably, I would say, matches Fred pound for pound when it comes to strength. But this is going to come down to one of those X factor things, one of those intangibles that you can't really measure. Because there's one thing about Fred Flintstone and Fat Albert that you have to take into account if the two of them are conflicting with each other. And that is, Fred Flintstone is a dumbass. Fred Flintstone always screws things up. Every time Fred Flintstone has a plan, it goes wrong. And he usually has to be bailed out by his wife. On the flip side, Fat Albert, while not always prepared for whatever situation that he's about to face, he learns from every encounter and grows and improves so that he can overcome whatever obstacle he may face. And he doesn't have to go running home to mom in order to fix whatever problem he is dealing with. So based on the intangibles, I'm going to give it to Fat Albert. Received my Android 16 update earlier today. I'm so sorry. I don't know if I've got I don't know what version it is, but I'm sure that means mine will be coming. I'm really not looking forward to it. Mr. Know-It-All, who? Yeah, it's that one guy. And Godzin, that was a joke. Let's see. Yeah. Hope Michael didn't just fart. No loud farts today that I'm aware of. You might have heard my air conditioner going or something. Let's see. Stanley says, well, God said to have instilled the craftsmen with the skills they need to complete all the details. Yes, that is true. Robert says, I have a talent for singing. When I do, I chase people away and get told to stop. Well, then I think your talent is definitely a unique one. Drunken Kung Fu versus MMA. Well, considering Drunken Kung Fu is actually a fictional style, a lot of people think it's real, but it was invented by Jackie Chan, specifically for the movies. But but then you got to take into account, well, that means it's Jackie Chan, and Jackie Chan is awesome. MMA fighters, however, it depends on who we're talking about, because there's like if you're saying MMA fighters today, the Drunken Kung Fu guy is going to just crush him. But if you're talking about MMA fighters from, say, 10, 15 years ago when the MMA was relatively new and people were actual martial artists instead of people who actually trained to be mixed martial arts fighters, because it's just its own style. It's just one that's designed specifically for fighting other people with that specific style. So if you're talking about when people were actual martial artists that were then adapting to fight people in the octagon and stuff, those people, I think, it would depend on the individual fighter. Some of them would crush a Drunken Kung Fu guy. Some of them would be crushed, depending on style. And Indy says gold is measured in troy ounces, 12 ounces per pound. Okay, so it would be worth less than 8 million then. It would probably not. You're going to make me do the math all over again? All right, fine. I will do the math all over again. So it's 151 times 12, okay, is 1,819 ounces times 34. Oh, the gold rate changed a little bit since the last time I did this. All right. So the actual value then of the lampstands, thanks to Indy Tiger for ruining it for everybody, the actual value of the lampstands is dropped down to $6,195,103.68. Bring back Ziggy the Clown. Okay. I'm getting something out of this. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Still damned expensive, though. That is 100% true. $6 million is definitely an expensive lamp. Salty Trekker, I know you don't know about... Let's see. I know you don't know about the Ben 10 universe. I know very, very little about it. I've like walked by when it was on the TV. Alien X recreated an entire universe after it was destroyed. As far as we know, Q isn't capable of anything like that. That would be true. If Alien X could recreate a universe, that puts him in the level of like Franklin Richards kind of power. Then, yeah, Q would get actually curb stomped. Jackie Chan versus Terry Silver. I got to remember who. I know that name. Let me look him up real quick. Oh, the guy from Cobra Kai. Okay. Jackie Chan, hands down. And, funny thing is, technically they're in the same universe. I still remember when all the pistachios were purple. They used to dye all of them so that they looked uniform. Worried people wouldn't buy them, so they had natural black blemishes on the shells. Yeah, but you know what? They don't anymore. And and the thing is that if you vote with your wallet, the companies will adjust. They care about your money. And so if they seriously think that people are going to stop buying their product, or people actually do stop buying their product, and they figure out that it's because we're using red dye number 5, then they're going to stop using red dye number 5. Clowns versus football players. You asked that one yesterday. I'm not repeating. People also tint their license plates, which I think is that is illegal, I believe, everywhere. But people do it. People also have like these clever little license plate covers that are designed to reflect flash photography, so that if you take a flash picture, you cannot get their license plate number. And that is illegal because most of those cameras that are at intersections use flash photography. And I will say this, first, again, just like with the window tint, I say throw the book at these people, because the only reason you would get that particular product is because you want to be able to break the law. And if you want a product that allows you to break the law, I say maximum penalty. I mean, I'm serious. 6 months in jail, $3,000 fine, whatever it is, you throw it at them. Because I have no pity for people that are trying to skirt the law. Stanley says vampirism, not sure why. Multi Gunman asks, how's it going? I am here. Good to see you, though. Thomas says hello. You must live in Kurdistan. That's why there are so many restrictions. Actually, Kurdistan is one of the lowest regulated states in the world. So, suck on that. Let's see. Stanley says, do many cops in Tennessee even bother pulling people over for illegal tint? No. And that's what bothers me. I think they should. If I were governor of Tennessee, I'd be like, okay, guys, we're going to do a little bit of crackdown here. You see an illegal tent, you pull them over. If they already got pulled over, you pull them over again. If they get 25 tickets by the time they get to the judge, well, then when they get to the judge, even if the judge dismisses the ticket, guess what happens? He goes back out to his car and he's going to get another ticket. And you're going to keep getting those tickets until you have windows that comply with the law. And that's why I say, if you want to have dark windows, you can, and you can do it legally, and you can have a permit sticker on your car, clearly visible, that shows the police, hey, these are legal. Let's see. My friends would get in trouble for dark tint and loud exhaust. Well, loud exhausts are commonly illegal as well. There's usually some kind of regulation as to how loud they're allowed to be. Just like at Walmart nowadays, you Spark drivers get preferential treatment over everyone else, including all those handicap spaces they took away. You're talking about, I don't know what a Spark driver is, but you're talking about like Uber Eats and DoorDash and all those guys. Yeah, I find it really annoying as a person that uses handicap spaces. I find it really annoying that many stores, my parking options are now extremely limited because they have 750 spaces for DoorDash and stuff. And then they have a bunch of spaces for curbside pickup from the COVID days and stuff like that. And I certainly understand why you have the curbside pickup spaces and all that. But, the handicap spaces should still be the closest spaces to the door across the board. I'm sorry, Walmart employees. Yes, I don't care if you have to walk an extra 50 feet if you're an able-bodied person. Trusty says, I'm not American, so this might be a silly question. Actually, you are American. You're North American. You're just a little further north than I am. United States is not America. United States is the United States of America. Anyway, I'm not American, so this might be a silly question. What does Homeland Security have to do with window tint? I have no idea. But that's who it came from. What will the window tint be like at night? Will you be able to see through through the windows in the dark at night? It would be like, I wear my sunglasses at night. You ever do that? It'd be like that. Here's a good one. Batman versus Samurai Jack. Ooh. That is a tough question. Because on the one hand, both of them have exceptional fighting skills. Ungodly levels of fighting skills, in fact. Jack is a little more specialized than Batman, but at the same time, Jack also has something Batman does not, which is a magic sword. A lot of people forget that his sword is indeed magical. That's why it could defeat Aku. It's the only weapon that could. And it probably, here's the problem. He has a magic katana made at the peak of when katanas could be made, is sharper than a razor blade, and he can wield it and slice robots to pieces, hundreds of them. Batman has got some really impressive feats under his belt, don't get me wrong. But I don't think he can counter Samurai Jack's swords. Batman is he's not a killer. Samurai Jack is. The only difference is in the cartoon, most of the time he's killing robots because, parental guidance. But Samurai Jack is very skilled at dispatching his foe. Batman doesn't kill. And most of Batman's arsenal, while he has some ranged weapons that Jack doesn't, like smoke bombs and batarangs and stuff, but the problem is very limited supply, only what he can fit in his utility belt, and none of them are deadly. So I have to give it to Samurai Jack, even though I do love Batman, but yes, Samurai Jack wins that one. Well, the tent is for cop's safety and for the... I don't know what the driver's benefit. Dang, Michael's still on trust and question. Yeah, you know me. Merry Christmas in June. Robert says, Stanley also tired of hearing about cops' safety nonsense. So tired of hearing about cop safety. You know what? I'm not. I'm all for cop safety. You know what? Here's the thing. I don't think that cops are saints, and I don't think they're devils. I think that there are people that try to do a job, and it's a horrible job because if your job is, think about this. You're supposed to pull over somebody and say they're going over the speed limit or whatever. You walk up to their car. At any given time, the person in that car could be a wanted felon with a sidearm ready to shoot. And that is an incredibly stressful position. And cops are not paid a king's ransom as far as their salary. And I'm not saying they should be. I'm just saying they're not. So don't think they're getting rich doing it. However, if there are laws that are specifically designed for their safety, and yes, window tint is one of them, then obey the law. It's not a big deal. And if you need an exemption, get it. I got it. It wasn't that hard. Fat Albert versus Cow from Cow and Chicken. Oh, that's easy. Fat Albert would just eat cow. Omni-Man versus Wolverine. Look, I appreciate the fact that I think that Wolverine could hurt Omni-Man. From what I hope I got my franchise right. You're talking about the big bad from Invincible. Invincible's father. And we've seen that, he can bleed. We've seen that he can be injured. Viltrumite DNA or whatever heals very quickly, but it's not indestructible. However, Omni-Man is one of the few people in fiction that has more fighting experience than Logan. So he's also got some serious superhuman abilities. And I don't think that it would... honestly, I don't think the fight would be as difficult as some people do. Sure, Wolverine might try to scratch Omni-Man, but that's all his claws would be able to do is scratch him. And all Omni-Man would do is basically fly up to him at super speed, grab him, fly out into past the atmosphere where Wolverine would start to suffocate, and then chuck him at the sun. Fight over. And that's the way the Omni-Man fights. He fights dirty. So I think that that's how it would go down. Omni-Man would just grab him, pick him up, throw him at the sun, fight over. Is Uber car with the one with Starfleet stickers? Yes. Mr. Bean theme song is bombastic. It's a song. Salty versus everyone in the chat. Well, obviously everyone in the chat wins. Godson says Fat Albert versus Omni-Man. Oh, that one definitely goes to Omni-Man. Fat Albert, while he is very strong, he is very durable, and he is very, very big. I think Omni-Man would not have a difficult time picking up Fat Albert, and he'd be like flying him up and goes, hey, 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 and then he'd throw him down on the ground and just make him splatter everywhere. There's Eddie Tiger saying, I'm still here. The check is in the mail. Hey, Captain Phantom. Oh, that's okay. Captain Kirk versus Palpatine. Now, that's an interesting one. I'm sure Thomas is going to, already has decided, well, it must be Palpatine. Yeah, he said that in the chat. So, you think, okay, Palpatine has some pretty obvious advantages, right? Primarily Force lightning. Depending on what age you're talking about. If you're talking about Palpatine from the original trilogy, that's pretty much his only major attack is Force lightning. If you go back to the prequel era, of course, Palpatine also had very effective skills with a lightsaber. So, what does Kirk have? Well, assuming a standard loadout, Kirk would have a phaser and a communicator. Kirk wins. I mean, there's nothing, I think, in the Star Wars universe that can counter a phaser. No offense to Thomas or anybody else, I just don't see it. Because a phaser can't be blocked with a lightsaber like a laser bolt can. If a phaser shot a bolt like you see in Star Trek 2009, that phaser could be blocked by a lightsaber. Kirk's phaser was a solid continuous beam. That could not be blocked by a lightsaber. It's also not, nothing like a laser. They actually explain the particles in phasers a little bit. But I think the phaser counters it. Now, if Palpatine is able to use the Force to wrestle the phaser away from Kirk before he uses it, which, don't get me wrong, is not an impossibility. That has been done to Kirk before in the original series. So if Palpatine does, in fact, successfully wrestle the phaser away from Kirk, then Palpatine wins. So I'll say this. I think Kirk wins, but I think Kirk wins on a very narrow margin. Like, out of 100 fights, I think Kirk wins 51 of them. Let's see. And Gross says, since it's the end times, should do a revelation. Oh, should do revelation. We'll get to revelation, I promise. I don't know, Thomas. Kirk would talk Palpatine to death. Wait, that would be Picard. Fred Flintstone picks up his car, including 2 stone rollers that are used for wheels. You're welcome. Yeah, that is a major. That's where you gotta understand. That's some serious strength right there. I don't know how much those stone wheels weigh, but it's a lot. And by the way, Fred is not considered particularly strong in Bedrock. It's just that it's like Bedrock is like Krypton. Everybody from Bedrock is superhumanly strong. Please bring back Ziggy. You know what, Ziggy? I remember Ziggy. It was cute, but did I love it? Honestly, no. Robert says, Strange New Worlds, Enterprise, and Crew versus the Cages, Enterprise, and Crew. See, that's kind of a trick question because, in a sense, that's the same people. Remember in Discovery, whatever episode with when Pike was on in season 2, they actually did have a flashback episode to the Cage to suggest that these are, in fact, canonically the same people. I don't buy it, but that's what they were saying. However, if you want to take them as 2 distinct universes, so we have the Captain Pike and Crew from The Cage and the Captain Pike and Crew from Strange New Worlds. Who wins? Well, I mean, Strange New Worlds has a significant advantage in that we've seen a lot more of them. We've seen more of what they're capable of. And we also, we know for a fact that his Enterprise is pretty darn badass. So I'm going to have to give it to Strange New Worlds. You asked me yesterday, baseball players versus clowns. Oh, and this time it's football players versus clowns. Well, okay, fine. So football players versus clowns. That it is a little closer than the baseball players. Remember, I gave it to the clowns against the baseball players. Football players versus clowns. I think that the football players will definitely last longer, but I do think ultimately it's still going to go to the clowns because the clowns can just bring wave after wave after wave of reinforcements in their little clown cars. And Godson is excited because he's number one in the chat. Thomas is number 3, apparently. Let's see. Yeah, it's Godson number 1, Street Preacher is number 2, and Thomas is number 3. In case anybody cares. I wonder if that'll update on the fly we'll see. And going on. Vampirism because of the dislike for bright sunlight. Oh, yes. That makes sense. SWAT team versus SAS. Really? That's what you're coming up with now? I mean, okay. Now, are you talking about the special, I assume, I just want to make sure. Let's see. You're talking about Special Air Service, which is a special forces unit of the British Army. I don't think that's a fair fight because SWAT is a civilian police force as opposed to a military elite unit. Now, yes, SWAT is elite for civilian work, but civilian work is on a whole different level than military. Because if they were actually dealing with something that was a military level threat, guess what? They'd call in the National Guard, not SWAT. So I think that that's an unfair fight. So I'm gonna rule that the fight was canceled due to foul. Let's see. I'm not even sure South Carolina has any tint laws since they don't require vehicle inspections anymore. I don't know. I know that they're different in every state. Well, let's take a look. South Carolina. Let's see. Does South Carolina have tint laws? Although I will tell you, the front window tint is actually federal law, so you got to watch that. Okay, so according to Google, it says, yes, South Carolina's window tint laws for vehicles, specifically the front side windows, which are the ones that I got the permit for, must allow more than 27% of light to pass through. So the lowest you could go then would be since you have to have more than 27%, so then the lowest you could safely go would be 28%, if that is how the law is written. Let's see. The windshield non-reflective tint is allowed above the manufacturer AS1 line. That's federal regulation. The top 4 inches, basically, of your windshield you can tint. You can't tint the rest. That is a federal law. Don't do it no matter what state you're in. And then, it says front side and rear side windows and rear windows are all 27%. So it looks like they're actually stricter than Tennessee, technically. In fact, it looks like the only, let's see. Let's go. Window tint by state. So here's one updated 2025. Let's see, film shades. So, all right. So just since you guys were asking, I always aim to deliver. So let me switch screens here just for Robert. And this is a chart of all the various window tint laws, right? So if we look at, backside window, rear window are basically the, anything behind the driver. Most, like Alabama's 32 across the board. Alaska, wow, 70, 40, 40. Arizona, 33, any, etc. Like if we go to, let's see, Tennessee, says, well, you see, this isn't entirely, it says 35, 35, 35, but it's actually 35, any, I believe. Tinting allowed at the top of the manufacturer line, no metallic or mirror tinting, and I don't know what this is, none. What is that? Tinting, other restrictions, okay. What is the darkest legal tint? The darkest legal tint will vary by each state. Yeah, but what's the darkest one? I see a 24, I see 27, 25. Yeah, several states have just no tinting allowed. 35. Looks like the average is probably 35. States that allow really dark is 25. And nobody really goes lower than that, according to that particular website. Let's see. But honestly, if we look at, oh, that can't be right. Let's see. I don't know what state. Yeah, I don't even know what state that is. But yeah, I guess I guess it is 35% here normally in Tennessee. But I think there's like a different rule. Like, let's see. All right, so windshield 35. I'm trying to see. I don't know if this is it. Bear with me. I'm curious if they have this in here. Because the tint rules are slightly, other Tennessee tint rules, medical exemptions, which is what I have. Let's see. I don't care about the population. And then they have a link to the actual code. The way trying to do 35% with the manufacturer light. So how come they can go lower? I'm trying to find the right law. And I know that there's something, I think it has to do with like SUVs versus cars or whatever, but yeah. All right, Stan, because you guys are just trying to slow me down. I get it now. Says, regarding the Bible readings, just looking forward to getting into more social stuff, although I'm sure that learning the correct way to build a tabernacle or an ark will be useful someday. Well, you never know. Let's see, what sounds better, guitar or violin? Depends on the type of music and the player, because a violin can be very melodic and very emotional. It can also be very janky and very country, if you will, when you're playing a fiddle, right? And all can be good, but it depends on the individual song. And guitar, same thing. I mean, guitar can be anything from a twangy country song to hard rock, and so it's you can't just pick one. You have to look at every song. Andy Tiger says, was at McFood getting breakfast. Uber Eats driver complained loudly that the order wasn't ready and he was only making $5 an hour. Well, then he was lying. I'll say this. If he was making $5 an hour, that's possible if you're in a market where nobody uses the service, and you limit yourself to just one type of run. Like, for example, if in the Uber app, in fact, I'll bring it up and show you. It's kind of interesting. So this is the Uber app, right? You can see a little map. If I hit the go button, it'll actually log me in, and I would be taking calls. But there's a little section for, I'm trying to find it here because I never use it really. No, I don't want to record my ride. I don't want destination mode. Not looking for chargers. Okay, here we go. Preferences. So these are the Uber preferences. You can see I have 3 currently selected. The ones that I do not have selected are deliveries, which would be like Uber Eats, Uber Pet, which, yeah, you don't want to do that, especially if you have a nicer car, and shopping and delivering, where you go into the store and buy stuff for people. Now, I could do all of those, and if I did do all of those, I would make a little bit more. But getting in and out of the car is very painful. I don't want to do that, and all that. So if the Uber Eats guy, but the other thing is, though, if you have a janky old car, you're not going to be able to do Uber. Like Uber rides for people because you have to have a decent car to carry people around. But besides that, I mean, I don't know what market he was in, but if he was anywhere near where you live, Indy, if he's making $5 an hour in your part of town, then he's just lazy, especially during breakfast. Barbarian vigilante, pesky human knows the art of war, master of drunken kung fu, elite boxer, and catch wrestling, highly skilled with firearms, blade, and blunt weapons versus Samurai Jack. Well, I'm not sure exactly. You got come on. That's not a barbarian vigilante, peaky human knows the state of the art, war master of drunken kung fu, elite boxer, and catch wrestling, highly skilled with firearms, bladed, and blunt weapons versus Samurai Jack. That just sounds like a laundry list of people that Samurai Jack has beaten. I mean, come on. Spock versus Tuvok. Now, there's an interesting one. If you're talking about and by the way, Tristan, that's actually a good one. So Spock versus Tuvok. It's going to depend on what is the actual contest that we're fighting. If it's a fight to the death, like we usually take these types of things, it's going to go to Tuvok. Tuvok is a trained security chief. He is, a master drill instructor. He is a hand-to-hand combat and weapons combat master. Spock is not. Spock will fight because, sometimes it's the logical thing to do. But he doesn't do it as a job like Tuvok does. On the other hand, if the fight was some kind of problem in logic that was actually a very difficult one even for a Vulcan, Spock wins. Especially since Spock has the innately human ability to use intuition to a certain extent, even though he doesn't do it as much as a normal person would. Gorilla says, well, gotta go, lather myself in the shower. You're welcome for that image in your head. Yeah, thanks, buddy, you jerk. Gotta look up Aku trying to order a pizza after this. Oh, man. Okay, turkey versus swan. That's... we see that's going to be kind of like, I think when we were talking about duck versus chicken, even though chickens have a weaponry advantage, ducks have an aquatic advantage. And I think it's going to be the same thing with turkeys. When we see turkeys, we tend to think of these giant, incredibly obese birds because we think of the turkeys that people are raising in farms for Thanksgiving. That's not what, if you've never seen a wild turkey just looks like a large bird. And they fly like a large bird, and they have weapons like a large bird. A wild turkey is not to be trifled with. Swans, on the other hand, are like giant ducks in a very real sense. Swans are actually very aggressive on land. If you walk up to one, they will let you know they don't like you. And they will be threatening to you and everything, and they will be very imposing sometimes. However, swans lack the real ability to deal any damage. Like ducks, they have bills rather than beaks, and so they can't peck you. They while they do have talons, they're not nearly as strong as the talons on a turkey. So unless the fight is limited to water, the turkey wins 100% of the time. If the fight is in water, the turkey wins 90% of the time. Thomas says Palpatine would use the Force to get the phaser away from Kirk. He probably would, but you're assuming that he wouldn't. That in 99 times out of 100, he would always do it. Or that he would always be successful, because he may not realize that the phaser is as dangerous as it is. Assuming this is his first encounter or something like that. Plus, Kirk is inherently lucky, which means that he is actually strong with the Force, which means that it's entirely possible that that could block some of Palpatine's vision. Brown bear versus alligator. Oh, alligator all the way. Will the Starfleet decals survive the tint job? Yes, because the Starfleet decals are on the exterior of the car, and the tinting will be on the interior of the car. Fat Albert versus Matthew Taserface Shortshanks. Now there is a really lame battle, because Matthew Taserface Shortshanks will see Fat Albert and go, "Hey, I know him. It's Fat Chuck, right?" And then he'll trip over his own shoelaces and die. Swan Goose watched battles happen and turkeys were no match. I beg to differ. Our neighbors had swans. Gladiator from Marvel versus Omni-Man. That's a really tricky one. They're both, if you don't know, they're both basically Superman clones. Gladiator is the royal guard of the Shi'ar Empire, while obviously Omni-Man is one of the invaders of the Viltrumites, or however you say that. And so in a straight-up fight, they are both incredibly strong, Superman level strong. They are both incredibly fast. They're like I said, they're clones of Superman. They both exhibit extreme resistance to almost anything thrown at them. So what it really boils down to is, I think, going to be durability more than anything else. And Omni-Man's durability is simply like he's very, very tough. He's got very tough skin, hard to break. It's not indestructible, but very hard to break. He's just many, many times tougher than a normal human. Gladiator's a little unique. Gladiator's powers are at least not. Look, I know that things change in Marvel, so I'm basing this on Gladiator from like the mid '80s when I knew him. Gladiator's powers were not based on his physical strength or his physical durability at all. That's what everybody assumed, but that's not what they were. Reed Richards figured this out in a really fun issue of Fantastic Four called Man versus Superman. And the Gladiator's powers are psychically based. His strength is he's probably stronger than a human, but we don't know exactly how strong he is. But like in this issue of Fantastic Four, he literally lifts up the entirety of the Baxter Building, which is actually what clued Reed in to the idea that his powers weren't what they appeared. Because if any actual super strong creature tried to pick up a skyscraper by one corner, which is what Gladiator did, the skyscraper would have, at best, you would probably just rip that corner off the building. And at worst, the skyscraper would just come crumbling down. There's no way that the skyscraper could handle the stress of being picked up by a humanoid creature. And so that's when Reed started doing his digging and stuff. And it turns out his strength is actually, like I said, psionic in nature. He projects a field that does, it's like almost like in the Invisible Girl's force field is picking up the Baxter Building, but the Invisible Girl is looking like she's physically picking it up. That's what it would be. And same thing with his super strength. He punches really, really, really hard, but it's not him punching. It's a force field around him that's punching him. Once Reed cracked the code, he was able to very easily defeat Gladiator. But we're assuming that, you know, the Viltronites don't know this. And in a straight up fight from 80s Gladiator versus someone like Omni-Man, I would probably have to give it to Gladiator because at least like Gladiator was taking punches from some of the strongest characters in Marvel and just laughing it off. So whereas a punch, I would dare say a punch from the Thing, for example, if the Thing threw a full-on punch at Omni-Man, it would hurt him. It wouldn't kill him, but it would hurt him. Let's see. What is never said in the original Trek shows how much Kirk was uplifted in the galactic barrier. Gary and Daner being the focus of the Esper uplift. Yeah, Kirk did well, and you forget also that Kieranite, I think it is, in the Star Trek universe, will give you force powers. And Dr. McCoy can just give you a quick shot. Ariel says, how am I feeling today? I am feeling like a steaming pile of crap, but that's better than I was feeling a couple of days ago. Still waiting for that check there. SAS. Someone with a bulldozer versus someone with a tractor. Well, the problem is bulldozer and tractor are very generic terms. And so you got to be more specific because, yeah, if it's a giant tractor, a little tractor, a giant bulldozer, a little bulldozer, either could win. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you had somebody on a riding lawnmower, which is technically a tractor, versus a guy in an industrial bulldozer that's like 3 stories high, I mean, that's not really a fair fight. Stormtroopers versus Marines from Halo. Really? Yeah, I think the Marines would just call that target practice. I got a 98 Ford Explorer. Everything was factory tinted except for the windshield and the 2 front side windows. Okay, but in 98, the laws in your state may have been different than they are now. Now, depending on the state, a lot of states will grandfather those things. Like, for example, in almost every state, if you have a car that's beyond a certain age, it doesn't matter whether it has seat belts or not. If you have a car that's beyond a certain age, it doesn't matter if it has airbags or not. Most of those types of safety regulations are based on an inception date because what will happen is, let's say that, I don't know what the standard is for your state, Robert, but let's say that the standard for your state is 35% because that seemed to be the most common one. And yours are tinted at 20%, so they would technically be illegal. But in 1998, 20% was legal. It wasn't until 2000 that they made it illegal. What typically would happen is if the law was passed in 2000, it would say something like, as of January 1st, 2002, because they give a little grace period there, cars must adhere to this standard of window tinting. You can't darken it more than 35%. There'll be an exemption for cars that were built in the manufacturer's year of 2001 or earlier. Something to that effect. Let's see. I've already read that. The tint of the glass itself. The tint is the glass itself on my vehicle. Actually, probably not, Robert. It just means that it was a professional tint job. Like cheap tint that you can buy on Amazon is literally just a plastic film, right, that you cover your window with. More expensive tints that you get from professionals is that it's still made. It looks very much similar to a plastic type of thing. And they cut it to the shape and they put it on, they scrape away all the bubbles. But then they literally melt it and infuse it into the glass of your window so that you can't just peel it off. Now, talking about the higher end stuff, not the cheap stuff. And so factory tint is usually of that grade or even better. Now, it could be that the glass itself is tinted, but even so, if it's illegal, it would be illegal. It doesn't matter whether it's the glass or a film on the glass. Why is the lower the percent, the more tinted it is? Because the percentage is the percentage of light that gets through. So 1% means 1% of all light gets through the window. 50% means 50% of the light goes through. 70%, honestly, most of the time, if you have a 70%, like you're actually legally allowed to have a 70% tint on your front windshield. You can't even tell it's tinted if it's at 70%. If it's at 50%, you can see it's slightly darker. 20% is pretty dark. Like at a really dark pair of sunglasses can get as would be like probably between 20 and 15%. Shere Khan versus Diego from Ice Age. I haven't watched Ice Age in so long, I don't know. Fat Albert versus the Blob from Marvel. Now, there's an interesting matchup, right? So, Fat Albert is going to take on the Blob. Did you just call me Blob? So, those two are going to fight, right? And, Fat Albert's going to have some trouble here. Because Fat Albert, as I said, is very, very strong. He's very, very durable. And he's very, very heavy. The Blob, his power is kind of weird. If he plants his feet, there is no force in the universe that can make him move. That's the idea. Although there have been cheats around it, like people that would pick up the ground he's standing on or something. But he's also very, very heavy and big. And the folds of this is kind of gross, but this is his powers. The folds of his fat are so pliable that even if Wolverine punches, and he's done this in the comic books, even if Wolverine punches Blob and then extends his claws into the folds of his fat, it will not cut him because his fat just kind of around it. You can't hurt the guy. Now, Fat Albert arguably has that same ability because look how insanely big he is. So on that, I think both of them would have a very difficult time hurting each other. The thing is that, and Fat Albert does have super strength. Blob, I don't think classic Blob was super strong. Man, that's going to be a toss-up. I don't know. Because I could see where Fat Albert might be, if he could get Blob by the head, he might be able to crush him. But I don't know that he'd be able to get Blob by the head. So, yeah. Bionic Man versus Detective Spooner, who was bionic, and iRobot. That's a really... what's funny? I will tell you, when I first saw the movie iRobot, the first thing I thought when they revealed that Spooner had that robotic arm was, oh man, they should totally do a $6 Million Man movie. Spooner is definitely fast on his feet. He's great in combat. He was able to fight off a horde of robots, which is a lot of credit to him. However, keep in mind that Steve Austin, no, not Stone Cold Steve Austin, the real Steve Austin, who was an astronaut who crashed and was turned into the $6 Million Man, Steve Austin defeated hordes of robots and aliens and even Bigfoot. Steve Austin also has more robotic parts than Spooner. Spooner just has basically his arm and his side, if I remember correctly. Whereas Steve Austin has one arm, both legs, and one eye, all augmented through bionics. I'm going to assume that in an arm wrestling match, Spooner and Steve Austin would be pretty much a draw. But as far as anything else, if they were actually fighting, Steve could easily outrun Spooner. and he can see from a vastly longer distance. So that gives him a tactical advantage. And Steve, Spooner is a trained cop. Steve is a secret agent. All right, man. I get you guys. What's with the versus stuff? You guys, that's all you've been doing for the last couple of weeks. Slender Man versus Siren Head. Don't know enough about either of them. Let's see. Let me skip ahead a little bit. Conan the Barbarian versus Thundar the Barbarian. Well, I think that they would attack each other and then both pass out from the insane smell under their loincloths. Those bills have teeth in them. I've watched the goose rip apart a turkey. I will take your word for it. I have not seen a goose rip apart a turkey. I have had a goose attack me. And yes, they have like little mini teeth in them, but they're not like. I will tell you if you and I don't know if you're talking about a barnyard turkey or a wild turkey, because I'm thinking about a wild turkey to be fair about it, and because swans are wild animals, and a wild turkey is not the same as the obese fat turkey you're used to seeing. Let me see if I can find a good. No, is it? Okay. So yeah, if we look at open image, a new tab. Open image, a new tab. All right. All right. So if I switch back, this is what most people think of when they think of a turkey. Generally speaking, a very fat, although this turkey is just puffed up, he's not really that big, but generally very fat, not very, I mean, you think about it, like picture what you see in the grocery store, a big old thing with feathers on it, right? However, this is actually more like what a wild turkey looks like. And you can see, if you look at its face, very sharp beak coming off it, good for attack. It's actually a type of vulture, which is why you see no feathers on its head. And then you can see it also has talons both on the back and on the front of its feet. So it is not something. Swans may have little niblet teeth inside their bills, but this thing is an air assault vehicle. Barbarian, vigilante, extremely dangerous, peak human, and highly skilled. I don't know what you're talking about. Haven't we seen Omni-Man bleed? Yes, we have. That's why he's not as tough as people give him credit for. But yeah, Trustin's taken off. Have a good one. A Kurogan soldier versus a stormtrooper. That is the question. A Kurogan soldier, the most incompetent warrior known to have ever existed, versus the Imperial stormtrooper.
New donation from Aravic.
Oh, thank you, Aravic. You awesome guy, you. And let me go to my nifty. So I go to the page and it's like, do I want to donate? Let's see. Oh, because I'm not logged in. All right. And okay. And let's see if I can see where this is. I suck at this. I'm still getting used to this. There you go. All right, so this is today, right? That's funny. It says it's tomorrow, but I guess that's because wherever you are, Aravic, is it tomorrow? I get to meet Kirk next month. I just don't know what to say. I'll be in starstruck like I met Riker and just say, I can tell. And he just said you can tell you're a real fan. So you're going to be William Shatner next month. I'll tell you what I said is, I honestly, I know you don't have time to talk, but I just want to say thank you for all the work you've done. That's what I said. And that's when Shatner looked up at me and he says, "What? I got all the time in the world. What do you want to talk about?" And I was like, people in, and he was just like, "Yeah, F him. Let's talk." So I ended up talking to him for a couple of minutes about like his horses and stuff like that because I grew up on a ranch, and but he's a really nice guy. I would just say, short and sweet when it comes to something like that, because if you're doing an autograph session, he's got to talk to a bazillion people. It's not particularly pleasant for him. So, I would just, honestly, I would just thank him for inspiring a generation and actually inspiring multiple generations and being the greatest thing, being the person behind the greatest character in all of Star Trek. My 62 Rambler didn't have seatbelts, though my dad put them in because he wanted to make sure I was safe. Also, didn't have to smog it as well. Yeah, that's typical with really old cars like that. Also, to put a radio in, yeah, a lot of old cars did not have radio standard. Conan the Barbarian versus He-Man. Oh, He-Man all the way. He has superpowers. Conan is really just, Arnold Schwarzenegger in a loincloth. Depending, I know there are versions of Conan where he's super strong, but generally speaking, he's just a barbarian. Let's see. A lot of people agreeing with that. Isn't Blob's power gravity manipulation? Yeah, well, he can kind of change his own mass, is what it is, and it makes it. An Indy Tiger with I was kidding, but thank you, buddy. With a $50 super chat says, "Gotta see if this works. Haven't been able to super chat in a while." Well, thank you, buddy. It obviously worked. You are too kind. Although, I'll just be honest with you. Look at the link here, Indy, because the coffee guys take like nothing compared to Google. I don't know if you've heard of them before, but Coffee is a little group that does these things. And yeah, so that's freaking awesome. But thank you, buddy. I really appreciate it. That will go to help pay for some of the crap I've had to deal with in this last month, which has just been hell month for me. Let's see. Let me log in here. Well, I just want to make sure I'm not lying here. So go to mine. Bear with me. All right. 6:34. Yes, so right here, you can't see the time. 8:39. Yeah, so somebody, let's see, coffee, where's this coming from? I don't even know what that is. Yeah, so this is a coffee donation. I'm looking on, and the person made a $2 donation on coffee, and then looking at PayPal, I got $2. I didn't get $1.50. I didn't get $1.30. So coffee, those guys are awesome. Unfortunately, Google is more convenient, but they are a little on the greedy side. Captain America versus Deathstroke. Let me see. Which I always get Deathstroke. So yeah, Deathstroke, Slade Wilson. That's what I thought. So Slade has heightened strength, speed, agility, reflexes, and stamina. So does Cap, of course. Now, it depends on which version of Cap we're talking about, because in the traditional comic book Cap, and I say traditional meaning like the original concept of Cap, was that he was made a perfect human being. Not that he was superhuman, but he was as good as human gets. That has changed radically over the years, and especially like if you look at the MCU, he's got strength equivalent to Spider-Man, which I would dare say is stronger than what I think Deathstroke does. I I don't have a lot of stuff with Deathstroke in it, but I believe that Deathstroke is not that super duper strong. So the funny thing, of course, the one of the jokes in here is like one of his powers he uses 90% of his brain capacity, giving him enhanced cognitive functions. Steve Rogers uses 100% of his brain, so I guess that's what's going to decide it. So Steve wins by 10%. And the interesting thing, I know some of you guys were arguing about Deathstroke, because Deathstroke is definitely a better shot probably than Cap. But what's interesting is Cap has the one thing that is perfect against someone who uses guns, and that is a big old shield that is also completely bulletproof. So it's like they were meant to fight each other. There's a YouTube channel did a realistic video about Captain America and his shield throwing. People were killed and decapitated. Comics in the MCU dialed it back drastically, of course. Oh, yeah. Cap's shield would be an incredibly deadly weapon if actually used in the way that it's shown. Deathstroke also has heightened skills since he himself was genetically enhanced. Yes, but so was Cap. Both of them were genetically enhanced. That's the thing. I would dare say, if you took the two of them butt naked and put them on an island to fight, it would be 50-50. But if you hand Deathstroke a gun and you don't give anything to Steve, Deathstroke wins 100% of the time. If you give Steve a shield and you don't give anything to Deathstroke, then Steve wins 100% of the time. But if it's more realistic, the way that you would typically see them, Deathstroke has his guns and Steve is usually carrying his shield. And by the way, especially in MCU, Steve is not afraid of using a gun. He carried one with him through World War II. But Steve would never shoot Deathstroke. I don't think he'd be able to. But he'd be able to get close to him thanks to the shield and then decapitate him if he needed to. Deathstroke would also, yeah. So if Deathstroke was truly superhuman at any, like Spider-Man level, there's no way he would lose to Robin or Nightwing. Just wouldn't happen. Let's see. Robert, and there's, by the way, thank you again, Indy. That is too kind of you. I do truly appreciate it. I do want to, I know I kind of glossed over it a minute ago, but thank you. I know you're doing that to help out with all the crap that's been going on, and thank you. When you meet Shatner, ask him if Star Trek V was just a dream after all. Oh, stop. Don't give him grief over... You know what? William Shatner is older than dirt. You give that man some respect, okay? He's twice as old as I am. You give that man some respect. And I would love to get a chance to meet him again because he was such a gracious guy the first time I met him. And, I'm just being realistic. He probably don't have that many years left in him. So I would love to get a chance to see him again. The sad thing is the con that I saw him at, it was supposed to be him and Leonard Nimoy, but Leonard Nimoy died just months before. Johnson said I can end the stream now. I will in just a minute. Spike is here. Good to see you, Spike. Greetings. Hope everyone is doing well. And he says, Spider-Man at 15 years old beat the crap out of the Winter Soldier with Super Soldier Serum and the Falcon at the same time in the MCU's Civil War film. They were so embarrassed afterwards. Yeah, Spider-Man, it's as far as power level, the MCU has not been very good at showing power levels, really. But Spider-Man is a magnitude above a super soldier. However, when you get to characters like Thor and Hulk, and even like Captain Marvel, the characters that are defined by their super strength, they are a magnitude above Spider-Man. And Drax should actually be super strong as well, but he's not, because why not? And Indy says, you're welcome. Well, I can't think of a better way to end than that. Thank you, Mr. Tiger. Indy Tiger. Remember, they're good.